Hi guys, Shar Pittman here, and welcome to our next episode of Woman of Purpose podcast. And we are continuing our discussion on healthy emotions and what that looks like. And with me today is Wendy and Becky, and the last session was really, really good. I love our after talks though, right? It's like we should have just a video of all the after talks because it just really kind of goes
they
into
really
it.
are good.
It's like, do we have to stop?
Yeah, right.
Because we don't stop.
Because we don't stop. No, we really don't. But we talked about this whole thing of emotions in the session before. We talked about how emotions have been deemed as negative and bad. And we identified and defined what emotions are. And emotions are really feelings, what we're feeling. And then we talked about the importance of understanding why we feel what we feel and not to look at even the negative emotions being negative. Because really there's no negative emotions when we can just identify we talked about indicators and dictators, and our emotions don't dictate to us, but they indicate something that we need to maybe deal with or just realize like, hey, I'm angry because I'm tired, So in this session, we're just going to really unravel some things about emotions and these feelings and the power that they have in our lives and how they kind of manifest in our lives. And so let's talk about that, Wendy. What does the emotions that are not dealt with, what can that do in our lives?
I think undealt with emotions. So I talked about in the first video or the first podcast about how emotions should be like clouds in the sky. They should come, they should indicate something to us that we're thoughtful of, how our emotions are tied to our thinking and our interpretations of the world. We should have that process and then it should go. Yeah. It's a process, right? Yeah. But I think when people get stuck or they want to push away their feeling, I think that that's the number one cause of anxiety.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
We think about anxiety as a feeling, and it is, but it's also more of an experience that way. Anxiety can be something that lasts for quite a long time. It can be a state that we can kind of actually I like to say we get stuck in it. We get stuck in that anxious state. And it's usually anxiety, if you think about it, it's kind of a soupy mix of a whole lot of feelings. There's a little anger in there. There's a little sadness in there. There's a little panic in there. There's a whole lot of feelings in there. And I think if you don't allow those emotions to come, indicate something to you, think about it, it's kind of like you stuff so much stuff in a garbage can and eventually the lid pops off. Yeah. And anxiety is one of the number one things women deal with for sure. Yeah. The other way that I think that emotions defensiveness becomes a real thing in our relationships with other people. If we become defensive about something and you're dealing with a lot of defensiveness, you always feel like you have to protect yourself and your reputation and insist on your own way because you're so insecure about your own thinking that you require validation from everybody. And so then you are just very insistent on your own way, right? The Bible tells us that love does not insist on its own way. And that defensive posture that comes from insecurity. If you really want to figure out what you're insecure about, figure out what you're defensive about.
Exactly. Yeah. Boy, that's a
if you're defensive about what kind of mother you are, or what kind of woman you are, or wife you are, or daughter you are, if you're defensive about that, it's probably because you're insecure about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
That is very good. And when emotions, when we don't deal with our feelings, when we don't deal with them, we see things completely unclear.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't really see the truth. The undealt with emotions become our truth. It becomes how we see things. It becomes the lens that we see through. It's like putting on glasses. It's like that's what we see, and we judge everything through is those undealt with emotions, those undealt with feelings. And it's not saying that, I think sometimes if we feel like, for me, I'm going to use myself as an example because I dealt with this feeling of emotion of anger. I was a very angry person. And a lot of it was just learned behavior. My dad was a very angry person. So anger in the household, that was normal. That was very normal. And the way that my dad dealt with anger was he drank. And then, but it's so funny because the drinking didn't help the anger. It magnified the anger. And so, we lived always like unsure of everything. And so I grew up thinking, okay, this is what you do. You get mad, you just blow up, and then it's everybody else's fault. And, and so when I realized like, okay, wait a minute, I can be angry about something, but I don't have to be angry. I don't have to behave anger in an angry way.
Yeah.
I can take that anger and say, okay, hold the phone. And I think that is what we're trying to unravel. It's like, how can we, so that anger in my life and in my marriage was awful. It produced in my home, it produced my husband to always walk on eggshells.
Right.
It produced me to always feel like he, didn't care. Or, you know what I'm saying? So it produced this whole atmosphere that wasn't even real, but it was my reality. It was my truth. And so when I realized that, wait a minute, I can be angry, but I don't have to explode on everybody. I don't have to do that. It's like, I can't even remember the last time I got angry. And it's like, if I did, it didn't last very long. And I did the Wendy thing. I had the conversation in my head, just in my head, or on a walk, you just start telling everybody off on your walk, and then all of a sudden you feel better, but it's like, it changed everything, And so it's so important that we understand that if we are feeling, even being sad, I think being sad is just as bad as being angry. Because if I allow being sad, and moping around, which brings you really into depression. If you're sad all the time, then that depression, it really does it affects everybody. It doesn't just affect me. And I think that's a lie that we believe, is that my emotions only affect me, but they don't. It affects everybody around you. Right. And when I had that revelation, and that it was the Lord that just like this freedom that came over me from this being angry all the time. Because, I hear people say, well, I can't control myself. And to a degree, that's correct when you're angry. But the other thing is when I came to the revelation that I have more power than I give myself credit for, that anger no longer had power in my life, and no longer did it dictate how I was going to behave. So then now I had power back in my life to be able to say, hold the phone. I'm going to make my home peaceful. If I'm angry, I'm going to go for a walk. And it really is completely different. And I think that if I can do it, believe me, if I can do it, you just got to talk to my husband. He'll tell you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Right. Obviously, it's always, with the help of the Lord. But
one of the things that I teach little kids, but again, adults when they're little, that'd be amazing. Is our behavior tells people we're angry, tells people we're sad. But I'm just going to focus on anger as my example. So if you're displaying angry behaviors, you're slamming doors, you're yelling, you're throwing things, you're hitting, you're doing angry behaviors, or even overpowering behaviors where you're standing really close to someone and yelling really loud. You're letting people know you're angry, but you're not letting anybody know what you're angry about. And if you don't tell people what you're angry about, then how can they help you? Right? So you can display angry behavior saying, I want you to know to get away from me, but I can't help you if I don't know what you're thinking. So if you think about thoughts being tied to feelings and feelings being tied to behaviors, because those feelings can at times create our behaviors. And it comes down to the idea of self-control and self-discipline. But I also want to comment on, you've talked a couple times about your experience in your childhood of being with an angry person, and people can honestly I call it addicted to chaos. You can get addicted to chaotic states. You grow up in chaos, you grow up in high emotional states. So when things are peaceful, you're like, something's wrong. I must not be dealing with something. People can almost get addicted to chaos. And a lot of the times, the way that we're displaying our emotions are learned behaviors, but our life is built on our choices.
That's true.
Our life is, my life, the way it is right now at 50 years old, is built on my choices. Unless you're victimized by someone, which is a whole other conversation. That was not your choice. Victimization is never your choice. And it impacts your life greatly. But my choices and my behavior and my decision is what's built my life. But a lot of times we have undealt with words and experiences that are still playing in our brain. and they're stuck in there, labels people have given us, things like that. And that's why we continue in those behaviors that are faulty.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about God's creation, I think this is so funny, is sometimes men have a hard time understanding where their wife's emotional state is at, even though I think we display emotions pretty well if we allow ourselves, right? I always like to say, like, God was so smart because when your wife is sad, he put these things in the middle of her face where you should be looking, that they get red and water comes out of them as an indicator of, like, I think my wife is sad. Like, that's so good, right?
Unless you're Becky.
Right.
Then they just come on for
and they
whatever
always cry,
reason.
right.
When I'm joyful,
Yeah.
when I'm sad, when I'm mad,
Yeah.
I think it is a choice. How we respond to things is a choice.
Yeah.
And I just really, my peace is too valuable to let somebody else's actions disrupt.
Yep.
Now, not that you're not going to feel something,
Right.
you know, and that's okay. But, you know, just the other night I went home and I was feeling agitated, you know, how women can get. And I looked at all of the men in my house and I said, guys, I'm just like really crabby. And I said it, not crabby. I just said, I'm just really crabby. So if you sense any edginess in me, you've been warned. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not you.
It's not you.
Like,
right.
don't take it personal. This is
Yeah.
just how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
So I didn't need anyone to walk on eggshells or anything like that. And it's funny because I think sometimes when we verbalize that, it just makes you laugh and you're like, that just sounded really stupid.
Right.
But I was feeling it and I
Yeah.
needed them to know, just warning you. I'm just kind of, you know, so it's okay to recognize that, but it's what we do with that. It's the behavior.
Exactly.
So you can say, I'm feeling kind of, you know, agitated, but it's what I physically do with that, or the slamming things. And I just don't do that. Besides, when you slam things, you could break a door, you could break a vacuum, then
you're mad because you just
broke something. And it's like such a snowball effect.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like we just have to honor ourselves and the things around us with our actions like that.
Yeah.
But
one tip that I give often to women I'm working with, as well as husbands, okay? Please keep track of your menstrual cycle. Just do it. Do yourself a favor. Husbands, keep track of that, okay? Because it does impact most women. It's hormonal. We don't want to be impacted like that. Men, if you're listening, we feel crazy in our own head.
Yeah.
Honestly, it can be torturous sometimes. You're so irritated. But if we keep track of those cycles in our life, we can start understanding, okay, that's why I'm irritated. It's not really because my husband's been an awful human being for my whole entire life. We need to manage that so that our thinking can stay clear.
Yeah.
You know, our emotions are indicated, like an indicator light going on in a car.
Correct.
And we need to stop and say, okay, what could be going on with me? And it's not always the situations in our life. Sometimes those things have not changed.
It's so true.
And then seriously, there's period trackers on your phone. Do yourself a favor, do your wife a favor, understand that she's a little touchy, or she's however she experiences that. Women also, you got to take responsibility for that. You got to own that. I love the big emotions that women have, but we do need to understand that it is our duty to ourselves and the world to understand our feelings and manage them well.
Yes. And we still can manage when we are going through those things as women, through our menopause, menopause, all of those things. We still have control over how we behave.
Right.
Just because I'm feeling a certain way doesn't mean I get to behave badly. And that's the beautiful thing about this whole thing of managing our emotions. Emotions, if we can get a hold of that if you're crabby, you know that saying, you know, if mommy ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Well, there really is some truth to that. There really is.
Well, it's an atmosphere thing.
It's an atmosphere thing.
And I didn't want the atmosphere to be what I was feeling. So I was just honest with the boys and my husband, and I just said, this is how I'm feeling, you know, but I didn't want that to affect their joy and their peace, you know, and I think that's just,
It's really honoring.
Yeah.
Right.
When one of the things we talked about in the previous podcast was how we don't openly speak about our feelings. But women, because we are emotional and feelers, and men as well, if we're just more honest with each other about our mood state and just saying like, I'm really tired, or it was a long day at work, or I'm feeling really agitated for whatever reason.
Right.
And saying what I need right now is I need to just probably go off by myself for a bit. For me, that's how I reset my feelings. I live in a world of a lot of feelings and a lot of people's feelings.
Yeah.
And for me to reset myself, I need to be alone.
Yeah.
But that can feel very disconnecting from the people that don't know me well. People that know me well understand my need to hibernate. That's what I call it. I'm hibernating. They understand that. People that don't know me well can feel like I'm ignoring them or I'm not engaging with them. And so explaining ourselves to people like you did, to come home and say, I'm just really crabby right now. It helps them understand, okay, it's not me. I didn't do anything. It's not me. Mom's just having a moment.
Yeah.
Or dad's just having a moment. And when we can come home and share how we're feeling, man, if you've had a really rough day at work, come home and stop being these like lone wolves with your emotions. Like, I just have to be stoic and all the time. No, women, we want to be our men's soft place to land. We want to be the place that you can come and just be vulnerable and authentic. Insecurity is something that really plagues men. They feel much more insecure, which makes them defensive. That disrupts a lot of marriages. And so men, when you're having feelings, let us know. Let us know, hey, I just had a rough day at work, or I just need to be by myself. Because otherwise, what are you going to get? You're going to get that wife going, what's wrong? What's wrong? What are you feeling? What's going on? What's going on? We think it's us, guys.
Right.
If you don't tell us it ain't us, we think it's us.
Yeah.
So please do us a favor and just say, hey,
something.
Look, it's not you.
Yeah.
I had a tough day, or whatever we can help you with. It's that communication about feelings that if we can't even talk about them, we're sure not experiencing or dealing with them well, are we?
Right. Right. Exactly. I love that. It's talking, communicating. And communicating why we feel, and not even if you don't even know why you're feeling that way, but it's at least communicating. I'm crabby, or I'm sad. I don't know why I'm sad. It's not you. I'm just sad. Just take a minute to do that. But communicating. And as we're talking about this, it's like, and how emotions affect our home, how they affect our relationships. It's like, it's so funny. You guys notice how we talk about the negative emotions, like the anger and all this. If like for me, for instance, if my issue with anger, if that really affected my household, if that affected my relationship with my husband, imagine what the emotion of joy, the emotion of being happy, the emotion, those positive emotions, if we want to, what that would do to our household. And if that really is true, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. It's like, if that is true, then ladies, imagine what we can do. And even if I feel mad or angry, it doesn't mean that I can't stop for a minute and say, you know what, I'm going to choose to release happiness and behave
Joy
Mm-hmm.
happy
and peace
and find the good in things. My kids are misbehaving. Okay, let's, my husband is irritating me, or, I had a hard day at work, or I dealt with a whole bunch of things. I can really shift things. And we talked about that a little earlier. I can shift those negative emotions into positive emotions simply by changing my perspective of things, and
Absolutely.
really change the environment of my home.
Right.
I
think if we give ourselves individually grace and self-care enough to take that moment and say, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
If we can uncover the thought in that moment,
Correct.
that's great.
Yeah.
That means we can go through the whole feeling process, right?
Yeah.
We can let go of the thought, we can let go of the feeling, we can let it go.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can get stuck in a feeling. We're not sure why we're feeling that way, but we need a break from it.
Right.
Okay. So grief is a good example of that. When someone that you love dies, or a pet dies, something important in your life shifts or is no longer and changes. Sometimes we can have grief over even the loss of a job or the loss of an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes we want to say, I need a break from that grief. I like to have people give them this visual. Like, it's like taking those feelings and putting them in a box and putting a lid on the box and putting it in a shelf in the closet. saying like, I can return to those feelings
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. That's
And I
good.
can try to sort it out later.
Yeah.
Because maybe sorting it out right now is not the time,
Mhm.
or I need a break from experiencing
Yeah.
that for a while, and I'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
And in that way, you can make the choice to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to create an atmosphere of joy in my home.
Right.
For me, I used to deal with crippling anxiety, which people who know me now are always shocked because I seem so confident, which I
Yeah.
am, because
Yeah.
I have learned that
You've learned.
no,
Right.
well, I've learned that no matter what situation is I'm in, and this is a new saying of mine, is like the situation can be really hard, but I can be okay because I source how I feel from the
Mm.
Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's my source,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know? And so the situation can be really hard, but I can still be okay.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so beautiful. But I used to deal with such crippling anxiety because I was so concerned about what everybody else thought
Yeah.
about what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like if they didn't tell me I was okay, I wasn't okay.
Mm.
Then I couldn't be okay. If other people were a little bit upset with me, I couldn't barely stand it. Even if
Yeah.
I felt like I was acting in the right.
Yeah.
Right. So resolving kind of those inner things
Yeah.
that are going
Yeah.
on with us help us manage our emotions in
Yeah.
just a more thoughtful, better way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is so good.
Mhm.
I love that how you said, it's like, doesn't matter what the situation is or even how you feel,
Mhm.
that you really can be okay.
Mhm.
You can. And I think tone, in our voice is huge. We hadn't talked about that, but as you were talking, it's like when you're expressing your emotions, if you're in control of your tone, then that sets the atmosphere as
Mhm.
well. Because if your tone is edgy or, whatever, I deal with a lot of tone from the boys, or, it's the tone that they're using in saying something. And so we're always aware of that. So that how you're saying it doesn't come across as offensive or
Mhm.
Yeah.
put somebody on the defense, or
Yeah.
Right.
that you're intentional with your words and your tone,
Yeah.
that what you say,
Mhm.
so that you're not wearing your emotion all over your
Right.
words. But
Right.
Intentional in your thoughts and your
Mhm.
actions.
Yeah.
Intentional
Yeah.
with what you do with your feelings.
Yeah.
And also intentional with those feelings of joy. I mean, if
Mhm.
anybody's ever seen me when I'm I'm usually happy and joyful. So I'm usually kind of all over the place when I'm super, super happy. But if I walk in the room and I make everybody else laugh because I'm just being me, yeah, I want to do that. I
Yeah.
want to
Mhm.
be like, I love my life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's taken a lot of work for me to get to a point where I can literally look at myself and say, I really like who I am,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's such a freeing, beautiful way to
Yeah.
live when you don't have all this emotional junk, when you've gotten rid
Right.
of the negative labels that other people have put on you,
Right.
that
Right.
and weeded out all those things that get in that veil of perception in our interpretation of the
Mhm.
world. When you can get all that junk out of you,
Yeah.
it's so freeing to really love yourself.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
can love others well if you're really okay with yourself.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And I like that word label because
Mhm.
when I dealt with anger, then I labeled myself as an angry person. And so
Mhm.
we're going to talk about that in the next
Mhm.
episode, I believe.
Mhm.
So we got to wrap up the session of managing healthy emotions. And so I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to give you our information. We have a YouTube channel for you to subscribe to and like. That is the Woman of Purpose YouTube channel. And then also website is womanofpurpose.net. Go ahead and check that out. And on the website, there'll be a link to Wendy Muska and her website. And I'm trying to get Becky over here to get some kind of like Becky's Corner or something going on. So anyways, thank you for joining us on this session of Woman of Purpose.